Since October 22nd, when Ole Miss went to Baton Rouge, 7-0, and ranked, goodness, what were they ranked? Top 10? They were top 10 in the country at that point, right? At 7-0. Headed to Baton Rouge for a Saturday afternoon CBS game at 2:30. And they got beat by 25. The bright spots for Ole Miss athletics in football, men's basketball, and baseball have been few and far between. So from 7-0 to 8-5 when it was all said and done, the only win after October 22nd in football was that 3-point win on the road in College Station. That was a good win. Don't take anything away from them there. But the November 12th gut punch against Alabama where they're taking a shot to the end zone. Look, if Ole Miss beats Alabama in that game, they control their destiny in the West with 2 games remaining in the regular season. But they lost that game by 6. And then you have the debacle in Fayetteville. And then Ole Miss was a no-show in the Egg Bowl. Mississippi State gets credit, 24-22. In some ways, Mississippi State was a no-show in the Egg Bowl. Neither team played particularly well. Neither team looked like it was like, there's nowhere on earth I would rather be than on this field trying to win this game right now. Neither team had that look, which was different for an Egg Bowl. And Mississippi State won the game. Let's pick them. I'm not stirring anything up. In fact, maybe the opposite of that. Ole Miss athletics is in kind of a weird place right now. The end of the football season was disappointing on a lot of levels. Disappointing on the field, and they lost 5 of their last 6 games after starting 7-0. Disappointing off the field with the way the Lane Kiffin, Auburn stuff went down. But when it's all said and done, Ole Miss kept its coach, added some nice pieces through recruiting and transfer portal, has gotten better at the quarterback spot, and upgraded at defensive coordinator, maybe significantly. Basketball was a disaster. We all know that. But on the backside of that, Ole Miss went out and hired Chris Beard, who by statement of most people that cover college basketball, at worst would have him as a top 10 coach nationally, and there are a lot of people that would say he is a top 5 basketball coach. And so there's some excitement there as he works on trying to put together a roster. And then there's this baseball season where you've got Ole Miss sitting at 3-15 in the SEC, unlikely to qualify for anything in the postseason. Not impossible, but unlikely. But it's a season that, as bad as it is, it's coming on the heels of a national championship. And so I think for some people that has softened what this season is by a lot. And so when you look at the last 6 months, November, December, January, February, March, April, you're an Ole Miss fan. It's been pretty bad.
Yeah, terrible. And
if you add on to that, what in those sports they have done against their in-state rival, Mississippi State, it becomes worse. Because out of all of that, there's one baseball win. There's a football loss, 2 basketball regular season losses, and 3 out of 4 baseball losses. And so that magnifies it a little bit. And yet I feel like Ole Miss fans are in a place where there is not this crazy level of despair. I think people are cautiously excited about football season. I think people are very excited about the future of the basketball program. And I think people mostly look at Mike Bianco's track record of almost 2.5 decades and say, this that is happening right now in 23 years has happened once, and it's this season. And it's on the heels of winning a national championship. he's getting the benefit of the doubt to try and fix this and fix it in a hurry. But it's a weird place that Ole Miss athletics is in the last half year.
Yeah, I think Ole Miss fans believe in Kiffin. I mean, he's a good coach. You know, it went badly there at the end, but the distractions of the Auburn stuff, I think, played a big role in that. You know, you have to believe in Beard from a basketball standpoint. There's no reason not to. The guy's been a winner everywhere he goes. I mean, when you have a bad season and you change the coach and you get a good coach, then there's just naturally going to be some enthusiasm and some excitement and optimism around that. And then, like you said with Bianco, I mean, and I agree, again, sort of the same thing with State a year ago. When you win the national title the year before, I mean, there's only so much complaining you can do, right? You can't come out and be taken seriously about talking about firing the coach after, months after winning a national title. You can't do that. So,
but tanking, right, in professional sports. People, there were some Saints people that said, don't go after Derek Carr. They should tank instead. And my response was, that's easy to say in March because you're not playing any games. You're not sitting and suffering through the misery that is watching a team lose on purpose.
And by the way, your example of that from the NBA right now is the Houston Rockets.
Yeah.
When James Harden requested his trade, they decided they were going to break it down and try and build it back up. They just hired a new coach. They got Ime Udoka that used to be with the Boston Celtics. Tillman Fertitta says that's the next step in the process, but they finished last in the West for 3 straight years.
I mean, could you imagine as a fan sitting through that? I couldn't. I mean, it's just brutal knowing they're not trying. And I'm not saying Ole Miss is not trying, but a similar principle applies. It's easy to say, and I've heard it from some of my friends and people that I talk to. It's, yeah, but the natty. And it's like, you're projecting. You're miserable right now. And the basketball thing is a little bit different because if you were looking at the team and the program objectively, that outcome was inevitable. There was absolutely no way that after they decided to retain Kermit Davis and then you saw what he brought in via the transfer portal, they were making the tournament. There is no way that was happening. So at least you got to expect that, or at least you should have expected that. There are some people that were talking about how it's a tournament team. It never was. Never was. So that helps, but being in it magnifies it a lot. The championship was only 10 months ago. That was 10 months ago. How much more of this can a fan take using that as their crutch? And you mentioned it, and that's the crux of the conversation, is State has owned them in that time. And you said it this morning, I'm stealing your take. It's not like these have been great Mississippi State teams. Not a bad football team beat Ole Miss and Oxford, but not a great one either. Mississippi State basketball made the tournament. Chris Jans did a great coaching job. They couldn't score, and they beat you twice. And the baseball team is in such a way that a lot of State fans are calling for their coach to be terminated, and yet he still beats you 3 times.
And took the series from you last year when you won the national title. I mean, these are the 2 of the worst state baseball teams of the past couple decades, and Ole Miss can't beat them.
Hey, Ed, you're doing a great job containing yourself, not having a big wide grin on your face as we have this conversation. And look, if you're a Mississippi State fan listening to this conversation, then you're like, yeah, about time you guys talked about this. But the reality is, we've seen the shoe on the other foot as well. It's not a fun cycle to go through. And I guess maybe the larger question is this, as Hunter and Columbus said just a second ago, just one of those years? Or is there something larger? And I think most Ole Miss fans right now think this is just one of those years.
Yeah. I mean, it's always cyclical. It hasn't been in baseball. Now, baseball, State has had the advantage now 7 straight years for whatever reason. I mean, and it's weird. This year, both teams are bad. Last year, both teams were bad at the time they play each other. There have been years where both teams are good, but State has just had that advantage, whatever that is. Call it a freak of nature. But especially with football, it's so cyclical. It really is. I truly believe, and I know Ole Miss fans don't want to hear this because they're paying their coach $9 million a year, but neither team will ever truly separate from the other. I don't think there's ever going to be a time when we look up and State has reeled off 5 straight 9-10 win seasons, and Ole Miss has been 5-7, 6-6, 7-5 that time, or the other way around. I don't think that'll ever happen. Both teams will have up years and down years. That's just the nature of it. Basketball, State's had a little bit of an advantage historically, but now Ole Miss, like you said, they've got a fantastic coach in place to elevate their program. So we're going to have to see. I think we may be about to see. I mean, really for the first time. I mean, you had Kermit's first year; both teams made the tournament, but you never had an extended streak where State and Ole Miss were both pretty good in basketball. They were both making the tournament year after year. So maybe that's about to happen here with Chris Jans and Chris Beard. So. Again, I think it's just one of those years. It's great to be on the right side of that, and I've been on the wrong side of it before. So we'll just see where it takes us.